What's up, Dragon Brood? So today we're gonna try something a bit different. I've had a few people asking for more strategy articles or I guess strategy videos and talking about different techniques that could possibly help them be better at the game of Magic the Gathering. So here we're gonna try a little something. I have a couple of pieces of, I guess we'll call it footage from my own videos that I'll use as examples here so we can talk about awareness. Because awareness in the game of Magic comes in a few different forms and I don't want to like bundle them all together, but I do want to give some examples of where you can increase your gameplay by just being aware of a couple of different things. Now, before we get into that, I do want to tell y'all about this cool deal from Into the AM. Now, we talked about them on a previous video, and actually, I got some merch from them, like this cool, sweet shirt here. Uh, but they have a new t-shirt bundle deal. It's 3 shirts, 60 bucks, but you can get 10% off using my link code that'll be down in the description, so you can check that out. I'll probably also have it here on the screen if you want to check that out, get a deal, and honestly check out some of their other stuff. I actually really like them and their stuff's actually very good. So with that out of the way, why don't we take a look at this ability to be more aware when you're playing a game of Magic. Okay, now the first concept I want to talk about here is metagame awareness. And this is important because one, you know both what the other popular decks are and how they operate, and for the most part, you'll likely know 85% or better what their list include. The other part of metagame awareness is also understanding what your deck is capable of or afraid of versus other decks. That also helps you determine your plays. So I bring this up for this particular game here that we're playing. And bear with me, we're going to be trying to go through the game in some steps probably to kind of show some stuff. So this is weird, like inception of me watching me play and talk to you about it. But the situation we have here is that it's going into turn 2. Now, we just played a land, we played the World Tree, and we had the ability to play a Valky here. Now, generally, you don't want to play a Valky here because one, we'd have to use our mana from our Gilded Goose, and then that's going to leave us with only 3 to use next turn. So that's not great, especially looking at the lands in our hand, meaning we're not going to have access to black mana if for some reason we do decide we want to play Binding of the Old Gods. The problem here, though, is we're playing against mono white aggro or some variation thereof. So we're kind of taking a guess here. But if it is, then we do know that there's the situation that something like a Heliod is going to be very bad for us. Now, if we're worried about Heliod that costs 3, it is a reasonable assumption that we could wait and play Valky next turn. However, it doesn't change our game very much, right? Let's say we do go ahead and use Valky next turn. Well, then we still, the way our hand stands, aren't going to be able to play our other spells anyway on turn 4 because we're still going to be short of the proper color of mana. So it doesn't really change much other than the fact that we could, during their, well, not even that because we have a tapped World Tree. So if I had played the Plains, it's possible we could have passed, made a food, play Valky next turn, play a food or play a Binding of the Old Gods on the following turn. However, what we get here in this situation is actually something a step more interesting. Because then we start thinking about, okay, we know Heliod is a big problem to deal with because we can't remove it easily. But we do also know that they have turn 2 plays like Luminarch Aspirant that would also be good. So if they don't have a Heliod, then we still get a benefit by playing Valky here. Even next turn, we could turn Valky into a Luminarch Aspirant and start getting +1/+1 counters of our own. So that makes Valky become a much bigger play. And we get kind of a two-sided benefit that if we do hit the Heliod, then we get to use Heliod ourselves later. So every play we're making here and every decision about this Valky really has less to do about what our deck does and knowing how the opponent's deck operates. And right now, this gives us the opportunity to get a possibility of 2 of their most powerful cards and take away a really big advantage from them if they have it. So moving the game along here, I'm gonna go ahead and let it play while I'm talking. So here I'm kind of like deciding, like, do I really want to use that mana here? Because like, what if I draw something that's worth playing next turn? But I decided, you know what? It's worth it for the upside. Really put the opponent at a disadvantage more than gain it. Now it turns out this was huge because not only did they not have the Luminarch Aspirant we'll have to worry about next turn, they actually did have the Heliod. So now we take Heliod from them and we have a Heliod on our side. We can reload next turn, slowly play out these Binding of the Old Gods, and really start taking down the opponent's creatures. This was kind of like the first steps toward leading to a very long game. But because we had the Heliod, now the opponent's very weak. If you look at their hand, especially knowing that we have the two Binding of the Old Gods, now we almost don't care what the opponent plays because we can just start picking off all their stuff. So this worked out very well. But this is a case of, like I said, this is a metagame awareness situation because we've played against this deck multiple times. We knew what their strengths were, we knew what their best cards were. So this kind of dictated a play where I would normally wait on a Valky. It made more sense to go ahead and play it up front. Now, like I said, had we waited, could we have gotten the Heliod anyway? Turns out, yes. But the other side of that is we also had another upside of being able to take their second most powerful card if they ended up not having the Heliod in hand. So it's a case where it worked out great for us. If the opponent would have had both cards in hand, probably would have still taken the Heliod because we can remove stuff with Binding of the Old Gods. But this really puts us at an advantage where it was going to be really hard for the opponent to win from here. Now, moving the game forward, this is just saying all things considered. There's even more upside knowing that we can't get overrun if we have their Heliod, because if we play sweepers, we get rid of everything but Heliod because it's not a creature. But then we also can start giving our own things lifelink, and that really turns the match around as we can start gaining 11 plus with this Beanstalk Giant. So that part's not so much part of the lesson here, but it's just you can think about plays in kind of these larger terms that have much bigger impacts, much more stuff going on, even for the later stages, beyond what's just happening in that moment. Now, the second type of awareness I want to talk about is situational awareness. This is a bit different in the sense of this tries to take into account things you've seen during the course of the game, things that you know your deck is capable of or not capable of, and then how to sequence some cards out with kind of extra information you have later in the game here. Whereas sometimes you're using the metagame awareness to make a decision just on expectation because of past experiences with that deck or information you're bringing into the game. Situational awareness to me is more of taking stock of the situation, things you've seen, things that you've removed earlier, how your opponents played their hand, and then using that to make a decision. So here, we're in a spot where we're starting to get a little low on life. Opponent has two attackers. We don't really have the mana we need for a Garrick, and we just got our second or our extra land, so we know we're not going to get there yet. So we need to remove the opponent's creatures, and we have two removal cards in hand. We have Bloodchief's Thirst, and we have Mythos of Nethroi. Now, there's a few different things to really be thinking about here because the largest is the casting cost. We only have 4 mana, and a lot of times, one of the heuristics you have in Magic is you want to be as mana efficient as you can be on every single turn. Well, here, that would dictate us playing the Bloodchief's Thirst. But that's not necessarily what we want to do. We want to take a second to think about it before we do it. Because we could play Mythos of Nethroi here. Then, if we had the option to kill something next turn, we could play something and use a Bloodchief's Thirst for 1 mana if there was something we thought we could kill. Now, that being said, we've also seen the opponent's deck. Like, if you look here, you can see that the opponent has, that's a special art, whatever you call it, extended art, Felidar Retreat in their graveyard. So we know cards like Mythos of Nethroi, we may still need to use later in the game. So we don't want to use that as our removal of choice here. So here we're going to go ahead and play Bloodchief's Thirst because that makes the most sense. It's not just about being mana efficient here. This is really about what we may need to use our resources for on future turns. And knowing that we still have the ability to play Mythos of Nethroi, then we can say, okay, what if we decide next turn to go ahead and just play Shovel and kill something? Or maybe even, depending on, game state, what your opponent plays, you still have the door open to play Llanowar Visionary, draw a card, and then play the Mythos of Nethroi behind it. Now here, we ended up going ahead and playing out the Bloodchief's Thirst. but I do discuss this a lot uh, during the course of the video where I'm explaining here's why I'm slowly thinking through this, because there are situations where you may want one versus the other. So we go ahead and play Blood Chief's Thirst here, hoping they don't have a protective spell of some kind, Snakeskin Veil, something like that. They ended up not having it. Now, we did know that the opponent also had Wildborn Preservers because I saw one earlier in the game, and that is one of the things that slowed me up and said, okay, well, if they have another, what if I just sit on this Blood Chief's Thirst and I get to kill that? And there's a Cobra, right? So, as it stands, it is very possible that we could have kept that Blood Chief's Thirst and killed something and still played something this turn. But still didn't feel bad about the decision because we do still have 2 kill spells in hand. We just have to be careful about how we want to play them. So here, decide to go with the Shovel, then go ahead and play Binding of the Old Gods. Now, I'd also like to say, when you're talking about that last game with the situational awareness, it's very possible that there are other scenarios where playing one spell over the other could be significant. Let's say we're playing against something like Rogues. Well, just about every creature in the Rogues deck, minus Lurrus in the popular builds, are going to be 2 mana or less. So in that instance, it almost makes more sense to go ahead and use our Mythos of Nithoroi there as a removal card if we want to, and then sit on something like the Blood Chief's Thirst. The reason being is that the following turn, we can still kill almost any creature we want to, but we'll have the option for 2 spells. We could also force the opponent to decide, say if we're targeting one of their crabs, if they want to protect that since we possibly are low on cards and they want to mill us out still, or do they want to let it resolve and see what we play next? And then that can open up more doors for us as well. So even if they were to go ahead and try to protect their card, then we go ahead and play something else, possibly with the hand that we had, Binding of the Old Gods, to go ahead and kill a creature. So even though you make one decision over the other, it's not always automatic. I know there's a lot of things we try to teach in Magic to say, okay, this is what you want to do most of the time, but there's a lot of exceptions. And those 2 situations are kind of exactly that. Whereas it made more sense to go and play Blood Chief's Thirst in that scenario. So very interesting. But I think awareness is one of those things, it's hard to quantify, and I'm sure even people watching this are going to have a different definition than I do. So I apologize for that if that doesn't work for you. But let me know down in the comments both other types of things you want help with or want to know about, and maybe we can make a video for it, or if you even like these types of videos. As I kind of step into this and start making more of them, I'm kind of curious what people like and what you're looking for. But either way, if you haven't, please remember to like this video, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, help me get this stuff out in front of more people, get more viewers, and if so, we'll do more of this. Why not? So that's all I have for you for now. We'll see you next time.